What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 182 of the How to Hardscape podcast, where we talk about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. And on today's episode, I'm just going to talk about budgeting, about our year in review here on How to Hardscape, and our plans for the coming year here. So a few topics to get into on today's episode, as well as how we're going to close out the year. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. But before I get into that, I want to thank our sponsor, Cycle CPA. If you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA. They are at cyclecpa.com. And let them know How to Hardscape sent you for $200 off there. And if you caught our previous episode, we had Joe and Carla of Cycle CPA on the show talking about end of year finances, what you should be looking at in your business, and just taking that sort of year in review, gathering up your finances and looking where things went right, where things went wrong. And this is something that I really love discussing, as well as we got into a little bit of budgeting in that conversation. So that's a great episode to kind of prime you into what we're going to be talking about in this episode and so much more. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. First off, I want to say thank you for listening to the How to Hardscape podcast. And those of you that like, comment, share, subscribe, wherever that might be to help support this, what we've got going here. I really do appreciate that. I am always on the lookout for new and exciting guests to have on the show, both business owners as well as outside consultants and even those beyond the hardscape green industry, to bring on the show to bring us a lot of value. I myself get a lot out of the interviews, out of having these amazing guests on the show. So I assume that if I'm getting a lot of value out of these guests and I'm asking the right questions, which I spend a lot of time on kind of formulating for each of these, especially outside consultants when they come on, to really get a lot of great information out there on this podcast, for this to live forever on the podcast. It's evergreen content, so it's not going out of style anytime soon. It's always going to be there for you to listen at any time. So if you're a new listener, you've got 181 other episodes to listen to, but I appreciate you listening in and tuning into this one. And to all of those that have listened to 182 episodes of the How to Hardscape podcast, thank you so much. I do really appreciate your continued support, and I look forward to a great 2023, both in this podcast as well as the hardscape industry. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in this episode as well. What we got to look forward to with that. But continuing on with what I wanted to do from the beginning with How to Hardscape was to bring all of this knowledge, all of this content into one sort of area that we all as an industry, as business owners, can dig into. And the easiest way to do that was through a podcast, where you can listen to it in the truck, you can listen to it on the job site, have an earbud in, wherever. It's a great passive way to consume content. So the podcast was the first thing that I knew I wanted to get into with, though I did start the website about 9 months before the actual podcast. I always knew that a podcast would kind of combine with that website to create this resource. The website's still going strong. We've got more than 100 articles on the website with a much more wide variety of topics on there. So that's howtohardscape.com if you ever wanted to go there. And also subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get a pop-up there on the website so that you can get updates on everything that we're doing here. But the website the article writing does get put on the back burner a little bit during the season, because in the season I'm more so focused on getting YouTube videos edited and published on I Am a Hardscaper on YouTube, and to get that content out, as well as continually focusing on the podcast to get more episodes out every Monday here. And then in 2022, I started the members only platform, which is members.howtohardscape.com. And essentially that is mostly a training platform for those that want to learn new skills or train their employees. And that's the main thing that we're going to be building upon in the ongoing future. And so this is also brings up the topic of what I want to get into today as well. But going back to when I first started How to Hardscape, and I wanted to create a resource that I knew that I could help out in some way. And I was at a conference and I remember seeing somebody giving a presentation, a Hardscape business owner, and in their PowerPoint, they had their numbers and in terms of actually bidding a project, and everybody got out their phones and took a picture of that slide. And being that I had just literally started my business more or less, I knew that this was a struggle for a lot of people, which is why for the most part, I'm sure people were taking pictures and trying to understand somebody else's numbers or trying to get some sort of sense of what they did to come around to their estimate. And it's something that I worked on in my business, and I created the spreadsheet that we sell on howtohardscape.com at the beginning of my business and refined it. And then when it came to starting How to Hardscape, I knew I had this resource that I wanted to get out there and into people's hands. So I edited the spreadsheet to be more user-friendly rather than to be following my brain, how it works, because I'm sure most people wouldn't be able to follow along with that initial spreadsheet that I created for myself. So I edited it to be more user-friendly, and then I put it on How to Hardscape, and I got a lot of excellent, great feedback with that. And even today, I still get messages from other contractors saying how much it's helped them, how incredible having that system is for them. And I've always said since the beginning that it's really designed for that 1 to 2 crew business. It's an excellent resource for that in terms of getting your overhead expenses listed out, getting your material costs down and the markup percentage for those, getting your employee information all in one space, and then deciding how many weeks, how many days, how many hours per day you have in a season, which will give you your total hours per season that you have to bid on, and then trying to recoup all of these expenses plus your profit, not to mention your owner's salary in those employees, to be able to make a good living as a business owner. And that was the goal with the spreadsheet. And fast forward to today, actually last year, I updated the spreadsheet and I sent everybody that had purchased the spreadsheet the update and let them know what that update was, which was mostly forms, automated forms from the materials that are added to an estimate. And those just automated forms that you could save as a PDF and send to a client. And I had this thought that I was going to continuously upgrade these spreadsheets as much as I possibly could. But it just got to a point where a spreadsheet can only do so much before it becomes inefficient to the user or very not user-friendly. And I knew I was getting to that point, and that's where my jumping off period and getting uncomfortable and stretching myself became apparent, not only in my hardscaping business, which I'm always trying to do, but also with this spreadsheet and with How to Hardscape, and what was my next step in this going to be. And like I said, last year was the members only platform, and creating this training platform so that you can track employee training progress with certificates of these different courses, help them gain new skills, or whether that's for you to gain new skills. I knew that the software was the next step. Transferring that budget and estimate spreadsheet into an actual software was the logical next step, even though it was something that I'd been putting off for some time here. So The software, as we get to this part of the announcement, the software is going to incorporate everything that the budget and estimate spreadsheet does to this point in a much more efficient, user-friendly method of doing so. A spreadsheet, like I said, can only be so efficient and so user-friendly, whereas the software just streamlines that process. And that means that the budget and estimate spreadsheet is going to be discontinued. So if you are listening to this for now, the budget and estimate spreadsheet becomes discontinued at the end of the year. And by the end of the year, the software will be up and running on the members only platform. So that comes down to what we're trying to do with this members only platform, because like I mentioned, we have training there, we have courses there, hardscaping, we have retaining walls, interlock, landscape lighting, gas fire features, as well as knowing your numbers, estimating, budgeting. Those courses are all involved for anybody wanting to get into the industry, as well as those wanting to train their employees up and level them up in your business. So we're going to continue creating this content in the members only platform, as well as enveloping this software into that members only platform. And that will continue our journey through into 2023 as we start to really work to improve this software beyond what the budget and estimate spreadsheet could do for you. That means things like creating an app around it. That means things like time tracking, scheduling. All of these things will be worked on in 2023 for that software. And with that being said, as more not only content becomes more available on the members only platform in 2023, so too will the software continue to upgrade in 2023, and so too will the price, which is a monthly membership, continue to increase in 2023. So the short form of that is the members only platform right now is the cheapest it's ever going to be at that monthly cost, whatever it might be at the time that you're hearing this right now. So members.howtohardscape.com. And with that being said, we are going to work to incorporate both the training aspect of the members only platform as well as this software, so that when you have employees, you can track their progress on what they're doing in their own user profile through training and even streamlining what an organization structure may look like. We had a consultant, Jackie Hart, on the show this year talking about what that kind of looks like, and that really intrigued me for me and my business and just looking at the future in my business. So it's something that I'm looking to incorporate with the software, as well as the members only platform, the actual content, and also just what that future of that content looks like. I envision a lot of different, more so employee targeted trainings that help businesses send their employees to the actual platform to level up their skills, reflect that in what maybe their pay might be or their title might be in the software, and just creating a cohesive unit between these two different things, as well as continuously creating content for actual business owners as well. And what that looks like is bringing on outside guests into the members only platform to create content around them, because obviously it's not going to be me teaching these things. I want to get actual experts teaching these things. The first year of the members only platform was spilling out everything that I know in course format. And that, like I said, was the Hardscape courses that we've got there, the knowing your numbers, budgeting, estimating projects. We're also going to end the year with things like marketing, like SEO, Google and Facebook advertisements, creating a website. Those are the things that I knew that I could launch this with and create a product around, and would launch us forwards into using the resources that the members only platform has accumulated in this first year to then bring on experts to expand what the actual platform will have on it. So that's the I guess without giving away too many details, that's the high level goal of this members only platform, as well as with this software and what this software is going to look like as we continue to progress through 2023 and into the future. I've got a lot of great ideas for what that will look like in terms of details, but that will be reserved for those that are also actually members, and showing them what that software is before it's launched and what my roadmap is for this next year. But if you're interested in anything that I've just been talking about here, shoot me a DM at How to Hardscape on Instagram if you have any questions, comments, whatever that might look like. And you can always get a hold of me there, or just contact at howtohardscape.com if you want to shoot me an email as well with what we've got in the works. And if you want to see what the inside of the actual members only platform looks like. I just want to take a break from today's episode to talk about our sponsor, Cycle CPA. You may have a CRM or project management software in place, but what data are you using to ensure your estimating is accurate? Having a proper accounting setup and accurate bookkeeping done is key to understanding overhead expenses and other costs that must be recouped in your estimates. Cycle CPA is a remote bookkeeping and CFO firm that helps to connect the dots from the financial reports to the hardscape and landscape data needed in order to reach high profits. They provide landscape and hardscape industry benchmarking, job costing, financials by service line, advisory meetings, and much more. Cycle CPA's team of accountants are specialized within the hardscape and landscape industry, and you can visit them at cyclecpa.com, and for $200 off, mention the How to Hardscape podcast. Now back to our episode. Also, with the podcast, just an update of what I'm thinking with the podcast for the ongoing future. Still sticking to the one episode per week on Mondays. I've always wanted to get to a second episode per week, but that just takes a lot of effort, to be honest, during the busy season to be able to coordinate those. I did it for a couple of weeks, and that completely drained me. I was able to do a couple community episodes, is what I called it. I'd love to do those more in the future. Those do require some engagement from the audience, in terms of if you go to speakpipe.com/howtohardscape, you can actually send me a voicemail that I can play on the podcast. And that's a good way for engagement. Or shoot me a message of anything that you want me to talk about on the podcast, or any comments that you may have. Every once in a while, I shoot up a story on Instagram asking a question that I have all the intent to use for one of those community episodes and to record it. And then I just run short on time. And that's something that I do want to do more in the future, to incorporate everybody into these episodes. But it's definitely something that is very time consuming and difficult to actually sit down and do. And still, at the end of the day, the thing that I do enjoy more than sitting down and just talking to myself here like I'm doing, and why you don't hear a lot of these episodes or just standalone episodes of me just talking, is because I enjoy more the interview format. I know that it is much more valuable for you, the listener, to actually hear an expert or somebody who has had a lot more years of experience on the show in an interview format, as well as for me myself to have somebody else on the other end of things to be able to converse with and throw ideas at them or throw questions at them to dig deeper into what they believe in business. So that's, interviews have always been what I stick more towards, and what you'll see more of in 2023 as well. Of course, you'll always hear I Am a Hardscaper interviews. That's where we have a business owner and do a deep dive into their business. Those will always be a part of this show. And we've already got a couple recorded for 2023 and many more to come, as well as new topics that we've never discussed that are just out of the box topics with actual hardscapers or people beyond the industry, which I'm also really looking forward to as well. Of course, roundtables are something that I'm always trying to coordinate and that is where we get previous I'm a Hardscaper interviewees into a roundtable setting. So we have 2 to 3 of them of past guests on a roundtable and do a deeper conversational sort of like discussion into business. And I always get a lot of great feedback from those roundtables. So that is something that I will obviously continue to do. And then the roundtable rally, where we have those that have actually completed a roundtable and we do a single topic discussion in an hour for another roundtable with I Am a Hardscaper. So something that I also want to continue to do with those that have gone through those multiple stages of the interviews. Roundtables are definitely the episodes that get the most feedback from whenever they publish, or just DMs in Instagram saying anything about the episode. That's definitely the episodes that I get the most engagement from. So thank you so much for those DMs, those shares, whatever that might look like on Instagram or wherever you share it, on Facebook, in a Facebook group, whatever that might look like. And then, of course, at the end of each year, what you've heard for the past several weeks, we do a wrap-up. So an I'm a Hardscaper wrap-up of all of the I'm a Hardscaper guests from the previous year. And I take a single question from the interview, and I play everybody's response to that question from every I Am a Hardscaper interview from that year. So, for example, the previous episode just before the Cycle CPA one was, what is one thing in your business that you've learned that you wish you knew from the very beginning? And then I just played everyone's response to that. And that's the benefit to having a very structured sort of episode for I Am a Hardscaper, is that Hardscapers coming into it, they know what the questions are more or less, and I can then take their responses and do that wrap up sort of series. If you enjoy that series where I do this wrap up at the end of each year, please let me know. It's a thing that I'm trying to improve on for next year and what that might look like. But I personally like editing them. I like hearing everybody's response to that single question, all summarized in one single episode, essentially. And it's the only reason why I continue to keep that structure of the I Am a Hardscaper interview episode, where I've got those questions that I ask everybody no matter what. At the beginning of the I Am a Hardscaper interviews, I make sure to change that up and do a more free-flowing part of the episode where we get into the interviewee's backstory, and then I can ask them a lot of free-flowing questions from their context that they're giving from their backstory until they start their business and get their business rolling, before I dive into those questions that I ask everybody. That's kind of, what they know what the question is beforehand, and they know what they're getting into. So I try to get a good mix of that free-flowing interview, both for myself, because it does get kind of monotonous asking the same questions again and again to everybody that comes on the show. So I try to get that free-flowing out of my system and to really just get to know my guest a little bit more in that first little part of that episode before we get into those structured questions. So with that being said, I'm always looking for feedback. If you have any on questions that I should omit or questions that I should put in that you think would be interesting to ask each of these guests, and if you do find those wrap-up episodes valuable, to see what everyone's responses are, so that I know I should keep that structure with every one of our guests that come on the show, so that I can do those wrap-up episodes. There's some questions that I'll never take out that I'll ask everybody that comes on the show, like that one thing question, what's one thing you know now that you wish you knew from the very beginning? That will never come out of my episode, and I ask that at the very end for a specific reason, to get that kind of final word from our guest out, and to maybe even ask a follow-up question based on that. But that's, I feel, a great way to get that final little piece of nugget and to wrap up and add closure to the actual episode, there's some questions that I've thought about taking out, like what's your favorite piece of equipment that has really helped you scale your business or get you to the next step in your business, or installation practices, whatever that might look like. But when I look back and I listen back to that wrap up episode with equipment and installation practices, there's still a lot of great information that comes out of our guests in that question, in their response to that question. It allows them to take it wherever they want, because I ask it, I think, in a very open-ended way so that they can respond to it however they see fit. So there's a lot I think about when it comes to these interviews and what the future of these I Am a Hardscaper series looks like, as well as having previous guests on for one-on-one interviews for a second round to see how their business has changed, to see how things are changing in their business, as well as how their business has evolved and leveled up over the time that we've had with them. We've been doing this podcast now for more than 3 years. So that's a long time to actually see what's happened in somebody's business since we've interviewed them. And I feel like now we're at that 3-year mark, we're at a good point in time where we can have previous guests back on and just do a quick interview where, what have you learned in those 3 years? How have you changed your business? How have you pivoted? What challenges have you experienced in these past 3 years, especially these past 3 years? So lots of great things that we can pull out of our guests for another round 2, so to speak, to have them back on in those I Am a Hardscaper interviews. And of course, I'm always looking for new guests to have on. If you do reach out to me on Instagram to ask to be on the show, I really do appreciate you reaching out and asking for that. But for the time being, just with the influx of people that I have asking, as well as guests that I'm even hoping to have on in the future, and a backlog of topics and guests that I have for the well into 2023, I'm only taking on those that have been recommended to me, and quite specifically guests that have been recommended to me from guests that have already been on the podcast. This is, I guess you could kind of call it, my pre-qualification process, so that I don't actually have to vet people. It's essentially more or less being done for me, because that does take a lot of my time, I found in the past, to be able to vet people coming onto the show, and I've even dropped the ball a couple of times with that. So just for the overall podcast sake and my time with that, right now I'm only taking on those that have been recommended to me for that. And I do appreciate those that have reached out and wanted to be on the show, and I've talked to those people and let them know also that we will continuously be in touch. And at that point in time, I typically follow them and just see the content that they're putting out there, as well as the quality of work that they're doing, and so on. So I do appreciate anybody and everybody that does reach out to me there. And that being said, the final space that we are working on growing is the YouTube channel at I Am a Hardscaper. There we now have over 100 videos, I believe, there or so, and that has grown excellently this year, and I appreciate anybody that has followed along with our journey there. That is more or less a document of my business journey and the struggles that I'm facing in my very small hardscaping business, especially this year and last year as well as some good tutorials, small little bit sizes here and there. So if you want a little bit of video content, that's where you can go to find us. We're going to be doing more of the same there in 2023, and we typically do 1 or 2 videos a week there as well. So I Am a Hardscaper on YouTube. If you want some video content, that's where you need to go for that. And at the beginning of this episode, I talked about budgeting, getting into budgeting and what to look for next year. But at this point in time, I think I'm going to call this a wrap and call this an actual kind of How to Hardscape update episode and save budgeting for next week and get into budgeting with you next week. Kind of draw more so on the software that we're going to be launching by the end of the year and into next year. So if you want to learn more about that, members.howtohardscape.com. And if you need bookkeeping, accounting, CFO services, reach out to Cycle CPA there, cyclecpa.com. Reach out to them, tell them How to Hardscape sent you. You get $200 off their services there. And we look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.